Today we're talking about blockchain analytics and a crowdfunding business model.
Happy to talk a little bit more about what we're doing and why it's required in the industry. So Crystal Blockchain Analytics does blockchain analytics. So we are basically building a software that allows you to understand and to monitor transactions that are moving from one owner to another. It allows us to map these transactions to understand patterns associated with them. And then these data allows compliance officers, for example, to employ the anti-money laundering policies across organizations, or it empowers investigators in the law enforcement to perform basically investigations and to track malicious actors that are moving funds, trying to launder them and get them out of the chain, convert them into fiat currency, and get away with these funds. So that's the core of what we actually built. And in the recent years, we have started seeing that these data, these analysis that we perform, it actually empowers so much more than these two groups of customers. Yeah, so it actually becomes needed by governmental bodies, supervisory bodies, to make decisions about where to steer the technology and how to change the regulatory frameworks for the countries and even bigger territories.
Thank you. Talking about customers, we have Roger from Crowdtransfer, and hopefully, so your company will not use the services of your company because
why?
I mean, in terms of investigation, hopefully everything will be fine in your transactions. Could you please explain a little bit what are you doing?
Crowdtransfer is a platform which brings football clubs and fans together. So it allows clubs to finance new players together with their fans, and the fans get a stake in the player performance. So the better the player performs, the more premiums and the more rewards he gets during the time. And it gives the fan the opportunity to directly be involved with their club and actually make the difference, because currently they can just support from the fan stand, but now they can have an impact on what's happening on the pitch, because they can help finance a better player, so the team gets strengthened and the fan engagement as well.
Where you are at right now? I mean, you're just started and you have connected a couple of clubs, and how many clients you have already?
Currently, we set up the whole legal framework. We had discussion with FIFA, the World Football Association, in order to have our business model cleared with them, that they approve of that model, that we're not being against any rules or regulation that comes from FIFA, as well as working with EY to be on the regulatory financial side, be compliant. And from where we're currently standing, we've finished the setup from the legal framework, currently developing the final software product, and we are currently in the onboarding process of the football clubs.
In terms of your experience as a blockchain investigator, what may happen during all these transactions in Roger's company?
Well, you're asking me to explain what can go wrong?
Yeah.
It's good to know.
Yeah, it's just a use case, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting, because exactly, that's where I'm steering the company, to trying to map out the risks. So decision makers in companies that are involved into cryptocurrencies, involved into blockchain building, are aware of these risks and they can make better decisions. So in case of, any situation where you are collecting funds from users, would that be retail customers or institutional, investors, for example, or participants? Of course, there's a big question of how are you responding to the compliance requirements? So do you need to perform checks on where these funds are coming from? How do you feel internally, in relation to what's the source of this funding, where these funds are coming from? How do you want to protect, so to say, your funds from the potential, some players that can become the major acquirers or major holders of these assets that you issue? Not to speak about, of course, about secondary markets. That's a completely different story, which also requires additional monitoring, because there might be other volumes which might trigger requirements from the governmental bodies or international compliance bodies. So yeah, it all starts with thinking about what do you need to do to protect people who are basically putting their money into the project, and thinking about what you can do best to make sure that you have enough data collected from that, It can assist, potential investigations that might be asking you questions about this activity. And you can be a fair player, contributing to the trust, because trust is why you are adopting blockchain as a technology for your business.
And do you have any use cases that are, different from others? I mean, really, really particular risks that you encounter during a business?
Well, I'm in crypto space since 2015, and it always has been a race between malicious players and people who wanted to battle bad actors. And malicious players were always very inventive, in the ways they are doing that. And the situation is changing super rapidly. So, right now, what I would tell you is like criminals don't use Bitcoin at all. Every criminal knows that Bitcoin is tracked so well that, right now, basically, I don't say the crime on Bitcoin doesn't exist, but, it's so diminished at these days. And now they're using something that has emerged very recently. So they are using, for example, bridges, which, allow you for a very fast, transaction. You can move across chains super fast and have a chance to, avoid striking them. So, yeah, I think it's a race. Something new emerges all the time. New strategies, new ideas. Airdroppers, people who love airdrops are in particular risk at this moment. So these kind of, scam and phishing activities are very much, we are putting a lot of efforts on untangling that and figuring out what can be done on this front. So yeah, always something new. And the more complicated cases are always international cases where we need to, engage law enforcement from different territories and a lot of virtual asset service providers who have some data, and we need to make them coordinate. So those are the most complicated ones and the longest ones. Right.
You're trading like a security token or like a utility token or as a bond. How it works in terms of regulation?
From a traditional finance perspective, we have a loan, which the club can book in his accounting schedule. And that makes it for him easy, or for us easy, to manifest around the financial regulation.
Yeah.
And in the crypto part, we reflect that share of the bond.
What about this kind of fraud that might arise here? Have you received anything recently or in your career that I'm sorry, I had the loan, but it disappeared. I had 1 million lost. Can you help me right away? I have loaned it 3 hours. Does it happen frequently to you?
All the time.
All the time. And what is the success rate?
Depending on what's your goal, of course, obviously, because,
Can you collect all the money?
Yeah. Of course, sometimes there are really weird cases where people figure out that they lost money weeks or even months after that has happened, and I can see how that is, can be. And that makes our life, of course, much more complicated, because now every criminal knows that the key to, go away is to move super fast. I'd say that for us, these cases are, the ones that success there, goes below expectations. If we're fast, if we can activate, again, the network of the compliance officers from various, exchanges, if we can immediately have, required support from the law enforcement, if they can obviously see that there is a, crime happening and it's easy for everyone to move, then the success rate can be very high in this particular case. But then sometimes you really need to wait, because, just freezing the funds on the chain is one thing. Returning them back to the victim is another thing. And that's something that, really bothers me all the time and, keeps me awake at night. Because, for example, I can see many people from countries who were scammed and they lost their money because they purchased some, non-existent goods on some website. And they put all their money into that, and it's maybe a couple of $1,000s, and you won't find any selection of lawyers or investigators or people who would be helpful for you to retrieve this money back. So there's a whole world of how do you find out other victims of the same scam? How do you combine them together? How do you make it a case? And how do you push for justice in this case? So I'd say, our space is very nascent in this sense. There is so much demand for such, people in companies who are having joint effort in this activity. I think that we can empower them, and I'm welcoming to see it.
What do you think with all new regulation like MIC coming in the future, in the real future? Would it be easier to trace and track people and transactions, or it's just a stepping stone in the whole process? Will the job be easier with it? And will your job be easier with it as well?
Do we want it to be easier? MiCA introduces rules which are unifying the approach, unifying the landscape, normalizing the landscape, which was very, very uneven and critically uneven, I would say, before. And many our customers from the United States are saying that, oh, well, we wish, we had something like MiCA, here, and so on. I'd say that, of course, that definitely introduces a point of bifurcation where there is a world who follows the standards, and then there is a world of, gray area virtualized service providers who are serving completely different needs, right? So then there's a question of how my work is possible. How do I introduce more trust? How do I, understand what's going on there? And to me, again, it's important to understand big players. We're not tracking people, for example. I'm not interested in that. We don't have this data at all. I'm tracking organizations that are interacting with each other.
Okay, Roger, we're talking about this regulation, MiCA, for example, how it will affect your company, namely as your CFO. How do you feel about your P&L of all this compliance that you will be dealing to?
Yeah, we have many compliance challenges, but from our side, we start at the beginning that we identify our customers. So we have a KYC check proper to Swiss banking standards. And after that, we have the AML checks also done either by a payment provider from our side or the custodian. So we rigidly check all the transactions and as well have to know who is the customer, because it also can have reputational damage for the club if you have the wrong investors. So for that reason, the clubs need to know who invested in those players.
I see you have the high level standards because of your counterparties. And do you feel it's like a burden for your expenditure line in your P&L, or it feels like a normal procedure that you will be dealing with and it's completely affordable?
So I worked in the Swiss francs for quite a while, so I'm used to those standards of requirements. I don't think it's a burden. It's on the onboarding mainly that we have to check our customers, and that is also helping us in gaining the trust from the fans as well from the club. So it is a small investment, but it's definitely worth it.
Okay, thank you for the answer. And the very last question we're asking every guest coming here. So are you for or against KYC mass adoption?
So you see, my view is that before we are introducing any kind of rules for everyone, we got to be defining what kind of problem are we solving. I see a particular trouble that is happening, around is that regulators are trying to design some rules that are got to be applied everywhere, and it's the same rules for everyone. And they're trying to take new technology and fit it into the, framework of something that already exists. And, so far these efforts were successful or not successful. Something has to be done. In my opinion, you need to understand for each category of the users that you're seeing, users of blockchain technology, you need to identify what are you protecting them from. And then from that, you are identifying the set of rules for this particular vertical. And that means not, punishing companies. That means actually incentivizing good behavior. So when I'm introducing KYC, I'm doing that not because, I just want to put a checkbox, in my compliance audit documents or something like that. I really want to be sure that if something goes wrong, I'm able to be a important, source of information for the investigators to serve the justice, to return the money back where they should be, and so on and so on. So I should be following that, being mindful of what kind of why I'm doing that. So if there is an answer, yes, it makes sense. It serves with particular requirements. I'm protecting particular, cohorts of the customers by doing that. and my government actually, gives me benefits because I'm doing that. Yes, why not? So I'm broadening the definition of KYC here a little bit, but you got my point. If it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't protect anyone,
Yeah, that's not the point. Yeah, time we'll show it. And what about your
Yeah,
point?
I completely agree with most of your points. I think it's a balance between the privacy and the security you want to deliver. And in the most cases, you have to think about what is the end goal, why are you doing those checks, and why are you putting those regulations in place. And when you know what's the overall goal that you'd like to achieve with those regulations and KYC and AML checks, then you should have them in place. But you shouldn't just put rules in place without knowing what you want to tackle with it.
Yeah.
yeah, that's particularly the thing that I love that Albus is doing, and I hope we're gonna bring some project that will we join forces together with Albus by actually enabling this or like broadening this KYC requirements. Yeah, but keeping this aspect of privacy intact, as you mentioned, and I think it's very important. It's a big challenge that the whole industry needs to fix. Yes.
Yeah, hopefully this collaboration will
Yes.
be effective and really just thank you very much for coming today, and thank you for watching Albus Talks. See you next time.